Hi there, my name's George and we're in Denver, Colorado at RaceKraft Design. Welcome to our shop of automotive craziness. We're looking forward to sharing a little bit of our slice of heaven with you guys today. So for this part of the tour, I'm going to show you our engine room, which is a clean room. Being in the healthcare business, cleanliness and making sure that we assemble things in a clean and controlled environment, of course, is very, very important. And so what you see here is a room where we can do some flow testing with our flow bench on various cylinder heads. We can also test run motors. Here you see a flathead. This is a sprint motor that'll go into an MG-TD hot rod that's out in the shop right now. So this motor is just being built right now and modified for its new life. Here you see a classic 6-cylinder Jaguar motor. This is a 3.8 liter motor and will be used for one of our Jag street hot rods that we'll show you a little bit later that's in a process of renovation. And so here is really where we can do all our basic test fitting and cleaning work, the machine work we do out in the shop floor. You'll see some of our equipment out there. And this just makes for a very nice space that we can work on engines and keep things tidy and neat and focused. All right, so here we have kind of the main shop floor. You can see we have a number of lifts that we can use as we need to. And there's a number of vehicles here around you that are really kind of interesting. This is a 1973 Porsche RSR that we campaign very frequently at some of the local races with our vintage groups. And this car's traveled as well, gone to Indy and other places. This bodywork, this orange bodywork you see sitting here is off a McLaren M6B, a Can-Am car from 1968. And we'll show you the rest of that vehicle. The chassis and tub are over on the right side, having some engine work done to it. And then when we move farther back here, here's a Porsche 914-6. It's also a race car that's undergoing a little bit of service, and that's a wonderful car. For any Porsche file to race, very balanced and just a great ride. And if you kind of look up here to the right, you'll see this Firebird, which is kind of a unique vehicle. It's actually one of our customer cars, and it has an inline 6 overhead cam motor, which was pretty unusual in that time period. You swing a little more over to the right side here. You see this IMSA GTP car. This is a March 83G. This car is liveried as the Red Lobster car and was really a very iconic car, driven back in the IMSA series of the early to mid 80s. We actively campaign this car as well. It's undergoing a little bit of restoration work on the off season, as you can see. And here you see this wonderful black Healy that is also a customer car that's getting a little love shown to it as well. And then if we kind of swing around, in the background you see this Aston Martin. This is a Vanquish from the early 2000s. And this is a gentleman here out of Colorado who has us take care of his vehicle. It's here having a little bit of work done. To the right of that, you see that MG, that's that sprint motor that I showed you a little while ago that was in the engine room. That's going into that MG that you see there. And then this car moving forward, this green and white car, this is also an IMSA race car. Was one of the very iconic Monza race cars that Huffaker campaigned, and these were very, very successful in the IMSA series at that time as well. And this car is waiting for a new heart. Its motor is out getting refreshed, and then it'll be back on the track as well. Now here to the right of me, you see this car that actually just came back from some preliminary body shop work in its restoration. This is a Jaguar XK120. This is a 1951. And this car will be a lot of fun when it's finished. You notice some interesting and different details, like these cutouts in this area here for side exiting exhaust, very similar to the Mercedes-Benz 300 SLR. So we're taking a few cues from different cars to create a bit of a hot rod, but other than that, it will be very true to the original Jaguar formula of an XK120 of the early 50s. A look behind it here, you see this 911 tub that has a fresh roll cage welded into it. This will obviously be a weapons grade race car when finished. And we're not really sure exactly what's going to happen with that. It may become another early 70s RSR, or we actually may take this to the point of a turbocharged car, a 934 or 935 variant of the venerable Porsche race car. And as we kind of move in this direction, we're back to some street cars here. This is actually one of the crowd favorites just because it's got this wonderful color scheme. This is a 1960 Corvette convertible, and it's just like a little jewel on wheels. It's super fun to drive, and you only get waves and thumbs up when you take this around the Denver area. So we love taking this car out on sunny days. And on the other side of that, you see a Porsche 356. This is a 356 Porsche C. So this is one of the latest cars before the end of the 356 lineage. And this car's had a pretty rigorous life. This was a vintage race car for many, many years. And we brought it back to more of a street car, and it's in its process of evolution into one of a 356 Outlaw style that you see quite frequently these days. The motor in this car is actually a 912 race motor. And so we felt because we didn't have the original power plant anymore, and this car had already had some modifications done, that by golly, we'd turn it into an Outlaw hot rod also. So you see, we love hot rods, but we try to stay true to the original manufacturers and perhaps create a new twist on what they originally built, and this car is headed that way. Then as we circle around here, this black car is a Bentley Continental R. I believe this is a 93, and this is just a great, comfortable road car. These cars were all bespoke, and they transmit that. When you get in them and drive them, they just have a presence all their own. Certainly not a sports car, but really, I think, a noteworthy and fun car to drive. And the car to the right here is another Aston Martin Vanquish. This is an in-house car. This is a Vanquish S from 2006. And this was Aston Martin's, I guess, supercar from the mid-2000s, or as close as they created at that time, with a nice big old V12 in it. Makes all the right noises, and it's just a fun car to drive, but is actually rather stealthy. It doesn't poke you in the eye as it's going down the street. Most people don't even realize what this car is as it rolls by them. And so it's fun because it's very stealthy in that way. It doesn't draw a lot of attention. So now we're on the other end of the shop, and the first car that I had pointed out a little earlier, this is also an XK120. This is a 1949 and was actually a race car from new. Not a factory race car, but one that was immediately in the hands of a privateer. and very successfully raced in SCCA and was a regional SCCA championship car back in its day in the early 50s. And as every Warrior, it's been retired for a while and is gonna see a new life as a vintage race car when we have the opportunity to bring it back to a more period correct style, and hopefully have a way of holding up the hood other than with a broom handle. You keep working your way down here, and now we're back to the mid-60s, late 60s Can-Am era of road racing in the US. And these are now two Lola T70s that you see here. This is a T70 that Dan Gurney drove in '66, a very iconic car. And sitting next to it is a Penske Lola that is also a T70, of course. It was the Penske car that Donahue drove. And this car is very famous and just a wonderful shape. Penske, as you can see, did all of the right things to change the shape and the aero of this car to the best of knowledge of that period of time in the 60s, and did it with an eye towards beauty. So one of the things I always love about these early Can-Am cars is, are they fast compared to a modern day prototype car? No, of course they're not. But what they do is they make wonderful sounds and they look absolutely fantastic. They're all unique, bespoke designs, and you can really feel the DNA of the drivers of them and the engineers and mechanics that maintain them. So these cars speak to us, and we love to drive them, race them, talk about them. This is a factory Porsche RSR, and as you can see, it also leads an active life as a race car and has a few battle scars on it. But these are super fast cars in their day in the 90s, and the owner of this car loves to race it, and if you're at any vintage races around the country, you may well see this car run. Then as we move along, on the left side here, we've got this McLaren M10A. This is a Formula 5000 car. The M10A and the M10B, they were just slight variants with modifications of the same chassis. The chassis was the McLaren F1 chassis of the day. But in the 5000 series, they all ran these 5-liter pushrod V8 motors. So this was about as close to what might be a spec series of its day as there was. And these cars attracted all of the best drivers of the late 60s and 70s. And this is a 69, as I said, so it's an early technology car. We call these flying cigars. They have that cigar shape, and they have the canard wing, you know, the small wing in the front as well as the wing in the back. But these really are very early aero cars. They don't take advantage of all the aerodynamics that you were seeing on any front-running race car, even 2 years after this car was run. And in their day, the M10B won the championship in, if memory serves, in '68 or '69. So these cars were very competitive, and this is a wonderful car for us to vintage race. This, so here's now the category of for something really different. So this is a 51 Merc, and not quite a lead sled. You know, it doesn't have the, it's a 4-door, not a 2-door, and it hasn't really been chopped. But it has an original flathead in it, and it has a lot of the rather classic traditional modifications that you saw in these custom cars. And this thing is just a lot of fun to go out on a cruise with, and we've left it a little bit rough, a little rat rod-ish. It may receive further love as the time permits in the future, but this is something a little bit different from everything else you see in here, but fun nonetheless. This is a Ferrari Dino, I'm sorry, a Fiat Dino. Has a Ferrari motor in it. These cars all came that way. It's the V6 Ferrari motor that you see in the Ferrari Dino as well, but this is the Fiat version, and these came in coupes and in convertibles, and certainly make all the right noises, and is again a great stealthy car that has some unique characteristics with its Ferrari power plant, but yet doesn't really draw much attention. Just seems like an old 2-door Italian coupe, but lots of character. And this car, as I tell all my friends is the car that cured me of trying to do my own restorations. This is a 64 E-Type Jaguar, so an XKE, and this was the last car that I personally did my own restoration on, telling my family it would take 2 years in my garage and turned into an 8-year project. And so that kind of cured me of the desire to do everything hands-on. Now I've got a wonderful team that helps me with 99% of it, but this car sort of has my thoughts and DNA all over it, and I love to drive this car. The E-Types are a favorite for me. This car you see here is a 1979 Porsche 930 Turbo, so this is an air-cooled car. Obviously doesn't look very stock. This car was worked on and modified by Roof before it came to the US. And this is a European 930. And also, like a lot of the cars here, has been kind of customized and hot rodded a bit for my tastes over the years. It now has a 3.5, it's the original motor in it, but it's now increased in displacement to 3.5 liters and has the larger turbochargers and intercoolers, produces about 425 to 450 horsepower at the rear wheel, so it's quite a potent car. I raced this car for a number of years. Has 935 suspension under it, and so it's a bit of a cafe racer, as the term used to be, and you can see it looks a little different obviously than a stock car, but has elements of the 934s of that era, and is just a wonderful car to drive as well. This is really one of the cars that got me started in collecting and all of that when I first purchased it back in the late 80s. So I've owned this car for a very long time. A little bit to the left here, you see this Ferrari Daytona. And obviously this is an open car. This is not one of the factory Spiders, but was done by the group here in the US in period that really used all of the Scaglietti methods and parts to create the open-top version of the Daytona Coupe. And this car is very low mileage and is just a joy to, hopefully we'll start it up later. Sounds great, runs great, and is a really fun vehicle on a nice sunny day. And then, as you saw when we came into the shop originally, here's another race car. This is a Can-Am car, and this is a Heyman SR3. Roy Heyman built 3 Can-Am cars in the 60s, and we're going to talk a little more about this car in depth, I think, in a deep dive. All right, thanks everybody for visiting with us here today in Denver at RaceKraft Design, and for sharing our passion for street cars, race cars, everything with wheels, and for riding along with us today.